everybody, Whitney Labrie here, and welcome to my channel and welcome to my very first collaboration with Bentley House. We have kind of been discussing doing some sort of collaboration for almost a year now. Ironically, she lives very close to my parents in Texas, and so I was able to hang out with her a little bit last summer, and then at the beginning of this year we had contacted each other to start planning out something at some point. And then in April, my nephew had a wedding, so I flew out to see him, and then during that stay I was able to meet up with her at her studio, and it was just really fun to get the opportunity to be excited about YouTube and miniatures and all that with someone, you know, who obviously does this for a living. The other weird connection that she and I have is that my childhood neighbor married into her family. So I don't know, I just feels like it was written in the stars that at some point she and I would meet up and be great friends. She had asked if I wanted to do an abandoned project, and I was completely on board to do that because it is something that I've wanted to do for some time. So that is going to be today's collab, is that we're both doing abandoned toy shops. With our own little twists, of course. May was a crazy month. A lot of weird stuff happened in my life. Some great, some not so great. One of those really not so great things is that I lost a lot of the footage from my original filming of the project. Luckily, I have a little bit of film from my camera phone. I had been doing some filming along the way for social media. The footage is a little piecemeal together. It was a long intro, apologize for that. Hope that you enjoy the collaboration, and with all of that, let's get started. To break down the concept from my abandoned toy store, I went overseas to the UK and I designed it based on Benjamin Pollock's toy shop, who has been in business for over 100 years. I loved the way this building looked with the bricks, and I loved all the primary colors. However, to be an abandoned toy shop, that must mean that something has taken place to create that scenario. And being a history fan, I chose to go with the light-hearted theme of World War II and design a bombed toy shop. Now, another very famous London toy store by the name of Hamleys was actually bombed 5 times during the Blitz, which started in 1940. So my design will be based on a combination of all of these things. For the shop, I want to create 2 main spaces. The toy shop itself, of course, and then I also want to have a second level where I imagine the shopkeeper had an office, or also maybe kept like back stock of toys and that sort of thing. And so I'm going to start from scratch on this build, and so I'll be using Dollar Tree foam board for all my walls and floors. I will be doubling up on the foam board for all walls and floors, so that just gives that extra stability, of course, and will cut down on warping and bending. The toy shop is going to have 4 walls, but missing 2 partial bombed walls, and the office upstairs will have 2 full walls, 1 partial bombed wall, and then 1 completely missing wall, and then I'll have 0 ceiling at the top of it, and then show that it's being reclaimed by the elements. I'm wallpapering both the shop and the office, but I did want to give it a look of wood planking behind, so I simply just took a 1-inch thick paintbrush and I dry brushed with a milk chocolate brown the wood planks behind and also on the floor, just to keep any white foam board from peeking through. I did 2 coats, letting them dry in between, and again, that's just to help cut back on any kind of warping when you're working with foam board. Now I've added a red carpet insert because so many of the vintage toy shops that I saw had carpeting and wood flooring in their stores. I wanted to do red carpeting because I was just, you know, I'm going with a primary colored theme, but I didn't have red. And so what I did was I took this piece of pink remnant carpeting that I've had for a really long time, and I cut it down, and then I used acrylic paint to paint over it. Now, typically, I would not suggest doing this for an everyday carpet, but because I knew it was going to be super damaged and it would just be peeking through, really, the paint makes the carpet, you know, kind of crusty, which is only good if you're working on an abandoned project like this. It's going to be damaged. For a great peeling wallpaper effect, and since all my original footage is gone, here's what I did. I cut out the wallpaper into about 1.5-inch strips. Real wallpaper comes in rolls, so this will give a real effect and be easy to manage. Just FYI, if your wallpaper has a complicated pattern, be sure that you cut it and lay your paper in the right order as you adhere it to your walls, or it will not look right. Next, take the generous amount of water. I'm using about 1/4 cup, and then adding about 2 tablespoons of of white glue and then about 1 good paintbrush full of brown paint together, giving it a good mix, and then dunking my strips of wallpaper into the mixture. This can be messy, but I love messy. And so once the paper is fully coated in your mixture, the paper will become really pliable, but also very delicate, and then you can really manipulate it and tear it. I looked at photos of old abandoned houses to get some ideas on how wallpaper reacts to water damage and heat over time, and then I just started playing around with it. The wallpaper will be quite wet when you're putting it on the foam board, so what I would suggest doing is just have a paper towel nearby, and once your paper is in place, you can dab off the extra amount of water and it will be just fine. Besides tearing the wallpaper slightly while it's damp and also folding it, allowing it to hang down, you can also simply take your fingernail and kind of scratch at the wallpaper, and it will give this really nice damaged effect here. Once your wallpaper is up on the wall and completely dry, it will have a crispy consistency. At this time, I went ahead and I added some additional browning and some mold with green paint and that sort of thing to the wallpaper, and then went ahead and let that dry as well. And you can see here in the photos, this is what ultimately it looked like. Because I want the entire outside to be bricks, I am absolutely not going to be adding individual bricks. So I'm using this paper clay. Now Shira at Queen City Minis has been telling me for quite some time, Whitney, you got to try this paper clay. So in the spirit of trying new things, I'll be using this today. Now, of course, my original footage is gone, and so I'm going to show you how I made the quickest, easiest bricks ever, and a couple do's and don'ts that I have learned over the years. Now, this is my brick roller. This is by far the easiest and quickest way to make bricks. And I bought this on Etsy, for those of you who are wondering. The store I bought it from, sadly, is no longer in business, but if you look up plastic brick roller for dioramas, there are several other stores that carry these. First tip in using this is to make sure that your clay is as even as possible, or the roller will miss the clay that's lower, leaving gaps. Now, this is great if you're going to be filling in those areas with like a stucco look, but it really depends on your needs. The second thing that you need to know about using the roller is to never go backwards once you start rolling. It does not roll back perfectly into the last footprint, and you will wind up with short bricks and your lines will not match up. Also, make sure you roll it straight or your bricks will be wavy. Again, maybe that's the look you're going for, like old crumbling bricks like in my case, and that's perfect for your needs. But just practice a little bit with the roller, and then once you get it down, it's going to be the easiest brick making that you've ever done. I always roll out my clay on wax paper, which will allow it to be easily removed, and then I will glue it to my foam board, and I'll be using my ultimate glue to do that. Once it's dry, I'll begin my painting. For the base, I did an elephant gray. For the grout lines, I added in a little moss with the ivy green, and then for the bricks, I actually used a combination of my tomato red, my barn red, and a little bit of espresso. And then while I don't show it, I also added in a little bit of sponging of black. And then you can see here what it looks like once it's all dry. Now, the green moss that you're seeing there, I just took a little bit of my ultimate glue, I added it into some of the cracks that I had created, and then I put in my tuft right here. This is like my flocking, and this I purchased at Hobby Lobby for $12, and I have used that same jar for probably 2 years now. Okay, so let's talk about the furniture pieces that I want to use for the room. These, of course, are all odds and end pieces that I have in my stash. The first thing that I have here is this counter, which is missing the base, but it does have one of the shelves, and these do slide out. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm actually going to put that on the bottom. And as far as coloring, I think I want to leave the counter the same. I think wood counters were a big thing at the time, so I would like to keep it that color. Now, this is a shelf. I'm going to turn it on its side, and I'm going to have it as a shelf that goes behind the store counter. I have this little shelf here that I think I'm going to put in the corner. And then this piece right here, this was supposed to be a pantry that came in my green leaf dollhouse that I did not use. And so I set it aside for another project for one day, and one day came. So I'm going to be building this out also. Now, one of the things when you have a whole bunch of different pieces like this and they're all different wood and color, they don't look cohesive. And the easiest way to make something feel more cohesive and come together as though it was meant to be is through color. So what I'll do is I'm going to paint all of those pieces except for the actual counter in a combination of beige and warm white. And then you can see here, this is what they look like. Now, I only did one coat on these because obviously I want them to look quite worn. And then for the pantry shelving there, I did glue one in broken so that, you know, it looks like a bomb hit it. Now let's go ahead. I want to distress these even more. So I will be taking some milk chocolate paint, a little bit of my dark green, and I'm just dry brushing on the paint everywhere I think would have some more serious age or water damage. Okay, and then here is the toy shop so far. And this is really the first time you've seen it kind of all together like this because of my lack of footage. Again, I apologize for that. And I'm going to go ahead and place in the furniture pieces. Now I am gluing everything in this diorama. Nothing is going to be loose. There's going to be a lot going on, and I'm gluing everything in because if I even move this a little bit, a lot of things are going to fall. So I'm just going to glue every single item in as I go along here. So I got the shelf in. I will put the counter right in this area. I want to do a couple things to it before it gets glued in, but at least we know that's where that's going to be. I'll go ahead and hang the shelf behind the counter. And then we'll have this little shelf over here in this corner kind of leaning also. So I think all the pieces are in place, and we'll start moving forward with adding toys. Now I've kind of put some toys in place here so you can see I really added quite a bit of stuff at this point, and nothing is really glued in yet. Obviously I want to see how it's going to look before everything gets in its permanent spot. But I do want to point out a couple of these little plastic toys right here. These did come from Little Miss Era that she handed over to me. When I was doing a lot of research on the toys from this era, there were a lot of really large, oversized, different types of vehicles that they were playing with. And so I thought I would sprinkle these around the toy store. And the rest of the toys that I have that I've been curating for this project, all of them were already broken in some way. And I really sought after damaged toys because I just, sometimes have a hard time with breaking good stuff for this type of usage. So anyway, everything pretty much is already broken. Now this dollhouse right here, this is a Reeves line wooden dollhouse. Of course, I absolutely had to have a dollhouse in this toy shop. It just didn't seem right not to have one. Although there's really nothing wrong with it. I am going to paint probably a little mold on it or something like that. But as long as I'm not damaging it, I guess that makes me feel better. And then, of course, I've got some little miniature furniture and stuff like that I'll put on that shelf behind it that goes kind of along the lines of miniatures. I've added some old stuffed animals and stuff to this back shelf. And then, of course, I have this adorable little elephant. Here I've got a cup of ball, I've got a puzzle, missing puzzle pieces. I found this random hand holding a little rattle or something, so I'll just toss this in here as well. And then I have this whole package of Mayberry Street train set and some books. And I'm gonna put some different covers on those and toss those in there. I also have this little guy. It is a fire truck that's missing the ladder. Thought that was kind of cool, so we'll add that. I also needed a whole bunch of shelf filler toys, and so I went on to Etsy and I purchased a whole bunch of printable miniatures, which included these book covers, a whole bunch of boxed toys, some really brightly colored vintage boxes here. I got some paper dolls. Here are just some more toy box type items. Tons of puzzles and games and all sorts of fun stuff, as you can see here. And here's some more paper dolls. And so I'll go ahead and cut all of those out and build those up. And I'll leave the link in the description for these Etsy shops that I purchased these from. Okay, so after I made all those toy boxes and the books and stuff, now I've added those in. You can see they're here. I just kind of scattered them everywhere. I think the hardest thing to do was after I put all those little boxes and stuff together, just squishing them and making them look old and damaged. I was like, oh, I put all this work into it and now I'm having to damage them. But you know what? That's all part of the fun. Okay, now going back to that counter before I glue it in, I do want to age it up quite a bit and I want to add some stuff to the interior. So I'm adding some game boxes, and those I'm not really squishing. I just want those all to be really dusty and old, like they've been sitting in there for some time, because they would have probably not really been touched too much by the elements at this point because they're up underneath the counter and they are a little bit protected. The train set, I'm going to go ahead and glue that in so you can see this is kind of what it would look like new. I've got the elephant sitting there on the corner. and then I need to go ahead and age that up. So I've added more tuft or flocking so that it looks like water damage has maybe occurred and mold has started to creep in. As well as the cash register there, I have used some black tester's paint since it was a metal piece, and I have aged that out. I have aged the glass a little bit. It will get more aging here pretty soon because I'm taking my Fuller's Earth powder, and I love to use this for dust. And basically, I dump out a little bit of the Fuller's Earth onto my workstation and take a dry brush, and I start pouncing on the areas. You can see here there's like a lump. I kind of toss it in, and now I'm just brushing it over all of my pieces to give them a nice coat of dust. And I'll be doing that with the entire area of the downstairs toy area. So you can see here, I've added a lot of my dust, and I'm just gonna pounce that dust everywhere. Pounce with my paintbrush here. And then after it's all in place and where I want it, I'm gonna take my clear acrylic sealer. This is matte. I definitely don't want to add any shine to this. I'll take it outside. I will just do a light misting. This will keep the dust in place, okay? And then that'll just give it this really nice, dusty, dirty look that you can see here in the video. Okay, a couple other things that I wanted to do that I should have already added, but forgot. I wanted to add some really cool posters into the toy shop from toys that were available at this time. And so I did a little research. I found a couple really cool posters, including some labels that I wanted to add to the toys, those 3 toys that Era gave me, so that I could make them look more like London or UK toys, and I'm going to add those to those toys. And then of course you can see other different advertisements for toys that were available during the 30s and 40s. Pretty much completed, aside from what I need to add rubble and that sort of stuff, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now I would like to add a front door area, and I pre-planned for this front door to be inset just a little bit. So I want to create a front little stoop, not too much of one, just one step down. That will allow me to put a couple extra little fun details on the outside of the building and the door area. And so I have a couple little remnants here of wood pieces that I'll use for both sides of the door and the top portion. And for the stair in the front area, I'll use a little bit more of that paper clay to create the steps. So I'm just sealing in, I'm adding my clay, and I'm sealing in the sides so that you can't see the foam board on either side. And then I've added the trim to each side of the door frame. And then I have this door that I found. This was part of my stash. I liked it because it had a nice oval window in the center that would allow me to be able to see inside the toy shop from this side. I envision, when this was a brand new building, that you could see through the front door all the toys, and then maybe to the right of the door looking at the building, there would have been a window there as well with toys and all sorts of fun stuff in the window probably. But that of course is all gone now. I did add a few of my acetate sheets to the front of that door. It's really hard to see right now, and I also made it look like it was a cracked window and that there was glass missing. So I'm going to add a detail to that here in a second so that you'll definitely be able to see the window. I'm just adding a little bit more clay to the front, just creating a step right there, just one little step down. And when I added the clay, I did a little bit of a glue base so that way when it dries, it would also easily adhere together. And then you can see here I've added just a little bit of white glue to the front glass so that you can see that it's a broken piece of glass. Now the glue going up the sides, not only is that holding that door in place, but it's also allowing me to add a little bit more of my flocking to that area so that it looks like mold is also growing up the sides. And I just like to sprinkle a little bit in my hand and then add as I go, just a little bit here, a little bit there, just depending on what I feel looks natural. And then I'm just gonna let that dry, and we'll come back to that and I'll add a little bit more details later once it's all dry. Pretty much the entire toy shop is completed at this point, so I'm going to move up above and start creating the second floor, which is the shopkeeper's office and backstock area. So this is the foam board that I'll be using for the ceiling, and you can see that I've cut out these little jagged, they look like crazy teeth or something. I originally cut it that way because I wanted these boards to kind of be jutting out like a wood floor, but now I'm going to use actual popsicle sticks to give this look, so I'm going to cut those off. And then I painted the bottom of it the same milky espresso brown that I had painted behind the walls and let that dry, and I'm going to go ahead and hot glue this into place. All right, and then for the flooring, I will be using popsicle sticks, and I'm also going to create a baseboard using popsicle sticks as well to give a additional stability to the flooring. This will allow the floor to also adhere to the sidewalls so that I won't get any sagging, although the stuff I'm adding won't be super heavy, so I don't think that I'm going to need to worry about that. And then you can see here that I've installed the popsicle stick flooring. I have stained it in a American Heritage stain color, and then I have sponged on some black areas where, again, water damage would take place or molding would happen. The other thing to note is that I used all the popsicle sticks that had warping issues or were not perfectly straight that I couldn't use in other projects, and that this really allowed me to use a lot of those, which was excellent because it's like, what do I use all these popsicle sticks that aren't perfect for flooring? And so this was a great project to use them for. So some of the furniture pieces I'll be using in the office is I have this old Crisbon hutch. It's a hutch base, so I'm going to use it as though it was a desk, and it's missing a leg. It's got some other issues, drawer fronts missing, etc. And then I've got this rocking chair that I'm going to use as like an office chair, so I'll probably pull off the other rocker. It's missing an arm. The arm is broken. So those are going to be the two main pieces of furniture for this room. The other thing that I thought might be really cool, kind of a cool look, is if I had a rug that was kind of draping over the flooring and dripping down basically into the room below. So this is actually just a fabric piece of patchwork here found in a stash, and I'm going to use that as a rug here. And then once it's where I want it, I'm going to take the same glue mixture that I use for the wallpaper. So water, a glue mixture, and a little brown paint, and I'm just going to douse my entire rug with that. And also I've added a little bit of black, just felt like it needed to be a little bit more dirty and moldy as it has sat there for years, let's say, with no protection from the elements. I just continue to add more detail where I think it needs it, and then letting it dry. And then now I'll go ahead and make some alterations to each of the pieces. So we'll start with the desk. You can see here we've got issues, and there's some kind of wood piece inside here. I'll go ahead and take that out. It's not necessary. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint my desk in a gray color. And since this is a plastic desk, the acrylic paint will adhere pretty well to it. I don't really need to do any kind of priming or anything at this point, especially with a piece like this, but you can certainly do a primer if you needed to. For the rocking chair now, which is now a regular chair, I'm just going to sand the heck out of it and give it some very worn areas. All right, and then I'll glue those pieces down. The desk itself, I pulled the drawer out because I want it to catch some clutter and debris, and I thought it would look really cool like that. I'm adding a little bit of rusting to it. It's going to have a lot going on it, so it'll just really blend in well with the overall look of the office, the abandoned office. Now I'm just taking some white glue and I'm smearing it all over the pieces, the chair, and again, adding more of that molding, that tuft, to kind of give it the look of moss or mold or whatever you want it to be, growing up and over, again, reclaiming the earth, reclaiming this spot. Okay, and now I have this box. This came from tiny friend Carol, who sent it to me for some other projects. I thought it would be really great for this. I'm going to put it over to the side, and I'm just writing trains on it. So this is like a backstock maybe of old trains in here. And then I have more of my old vintage gaming boxes. I'm going to smash those up and glue them together, make them look nice and old. I'm just going to shove those in the back corner. And then I have an old metal typewriter that I'm going to lay here on the floor as though it slid off off and fell onto the floor. And then some of the Bentley House minis that she gifted me, which is super cool, are these 3D printed frames. And then I also have these cards that she gave me. So I'm going to place them around the desk area and kind of on the floor, as though maybe the shopkeeper was playing solitaire or something to pass the time. I also found these old newspapers, and they are actually from the World War II era. Now, at the top of the newspaper, it says like American cities. So I'll just kind of wet them a little bit and tear that portion off. And so it'll look like that the shopkeeper maybe was paying attention to the news prior to, of course, the shop getting destroyed. Okay, so getting back to those photos, I wanted to do some that made sense for the space. So I painted all of the photo frames black, and then I printed up a couple things. I printed up a London business license from the 30s that I found online. I printed up £1 to hang on the wall because traditionally in America, we hang our first dollar bill that we make when we open a business. I don't know if they do that in Europe. Hey, they could have started this tradition, but we do it here, and so I thought it'd be fun to do it in this shop. And then I did find a picture of the royal family from around World War II. So we would definitely have a picture of the royal family in our shop. And then I just found this very generic family, London family from that time frame as well. And so we're going to go ahead and print all of these up and cut them out. And then I'll use again my acetate sheets to simulate glass inside of the frames. All right. And now I want to go ahead and hang those on the wall. Of course, I can't hang them up straight. That wouldn't make sense. So I'm going to hang up this one here, the royal family. And then I've got the picture of the quid right here that I'll put up on the wall. And for the family photo, the regular family photo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my dark brown black chalk pastel and then take my brush, and then I'm just going to basically hold my photo up on the wall and then dust all the way around that picture. And what that's going to do is going to give me the outline of where the photo was. So when you look up there, you can tell that something was there but is no longer, right? And so what I'll do then is just lay the photo down on the floor so that you can see that that's where that used to be, but now, unfortunately, it has fallen to the ground where it will now remain forever. And then the business license, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to have it on this other wall, and I'm going to lay it down on the floor. Now, what I'd like to do is add quite a bit of rubble to the floor of the toy shop, and then some rubble and everything around the office area also. So these are my rubbles, my rubble piles. Rubble is stained popsicle sticks that I've broken in half to create a splintered look, and leftover paper clay bricks that are really thin, like potato chips. To figure out where I want the rubble, I just basically held up a whole bunch of the popsicle sticks from the second floor and dropped them down. And wherever they landed is basically where I'm going to glue them in place. Same with the brick rubble. I just broke it down and then mixed it into the wood pile and dropped everything at the same time to see where it would land. I also found some fake climbing vines, and I wanted to have it mixing through the rubble again, just as the earth starts to reclaim the building. And so I wanted the crawling vines to kind of be going through the rubble and heading toward the shelving and the other toys and the counter and that sort of thing. So you can kind of see I kind of wove it in, and this is what this looks like. And I bought this at a Japanese dollar store called Daiso, I think is how you say it. Anyway, if you've never been to one, I suggest you go if you have one near you. They have really amazing crafts there that you can use in your miniature projects. I'm going to also add that same vine up and around the top portion of my project here. Again, just to elude that maybe it's being grown over at this point. And then once I've glued all of that down, you know, that green is bright and I just feels like it needs to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to take my English Ivy moss color green and I'm going to paint some of those leaves to give it a little bit more variation. All right. And then one of my very favorite things to use is this dry vine dead foliage product here. Again, this is a Hobby Lobby product. I've used it in a lot of my projects, and I'm just going to glue and sprinkle this all around the shop, both in the toy area and of course the office and on the stairs of the front door. After that's in place, now I am going to again take some of my Fuller's dust and dust the top area, and really I just again make everything look as old and as old and dirty as possible. And that's pretty much done. The only other thing that I wanted to do, because Hamleys was actually a toy shop that was bombed during the London Blitz, I did want to name this store as a nod to the toy shop and go ahead and add a sign above the door. I'll put it on a little bit crooked, of course, and then I'll add a little bit of moss and some brush, and there you go. Even though I designed this after larger, more well-known city toy shops, in my vision, this toy shop was really a part of a much smaller town outside of London. Maybe a borough so devastated by the destruction that the people who lived there deserted their homes, leaving this building and the remaining structures to fall into disrepair. I suspect that if I lived near this made-up borough, I would be inclined to visit this abandoned toy shop and seek out both the treasures and perhaps even the secrets that it may hold. Thank you so much for watching this start to finish collaboration with Bentley House Minis. While I suspect you know exactly who that is, if you haven't already, definitely check out her abandoned toy shop build today, as me and my Willy Wonka t-shirt had the chance to make a cameo on her show. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. I love to hear from you, so leave a comment, and hitting like and sharing this video is the best thing you can do. And of course, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and I haven't said it in a while, but please remember, in this crazy world, it is the little things that matter. Bye!